Welcome to Blind Shovel, an arts and music podcast. Today I speak with illustrator Sam D'Orazio. Enjoy. Yo.
Hello.
What's up?
Nothing. How's it going?
Good. How's your day?
You know, just kind of winding down.
What do you do on the daily?
These days, a lot of I work as a screen technician at a screen print place.
Oh. What, exposing screens and such?
Burning, exposing, coating, reclaiming, the whole 9 yards.
How long you been doing that?
Too long, I think.
Yeah, I've heard it's rather, it can be a very painful job for an artist.
It can be, it's more so that it's like maybe a little physically demanding occasionally. Like I'm in pretty good shape, but it's like a lot of chemicals, a lot of like, yeah, mostly just kind of like, I'm sure when I'm like 52, I'll be at the doctor's office and he'll be like, you have like 20 forms of cancer that we've never seen before. And I'll be like,
because of the emulsion?
The emulsion. And then a lot of the all the screen cleaning chemicals are pretty like gnarly. It's like,
did you go to school for printmaking?
I went to school for better or worse for illustration.
Oh, yeah. That's an interesting... it isn't clear if it's for better or for worse. When I look back at going to school for illustration, I realized it taught me the intangible value of a solid process. I don't know if you feel that.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think there's so many intangibles that you could take away from it. But I think for me, I went in just like really wanting to just know how to draw.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, if you go into printmaking, that's not really the mission there.
No, and I've met people who went to school for printmaking who then went on to like do like artist printmaking, and like the stuff they learned was almost like learning like cabinetry or carpentry or something. It's like such a skill-oriented process that it's not so much even like, it's almost separate from just being like, oh, I know how to like, draw a face or something.
Yeah. I've always found that there's, no offense to the printmaking majors out there, but for some reason I found a lot less distinct styles in that department in my school, as well as in animation.
Yeah.
There's just like there's like a type of animation expected from animation majors that's so neutral and so uninspired in a lot of ways. At least in America. I know there's great schools in France for that.
Yeah. My impression of like the printmaking and animation guys was the animation guys, honestly, both of them, when they'd have like their shows or exhibits or whatever, it just seemed like they were getting up to like the wackiest stuff. It's like,
what do you mean by wacky?
Because it'd be like, you'd go to like a printmaking show and you're like, I don't even know how this classifies as like printmaking, it's just like, there's sculptures involved or something. It just seemed like printmaking was like adjacent to painting and the kind of like, we're just here to kind of like have fun almost. I don't know.
No, I hear you. I majored in the end in painting after I got what I needed out of illustration. Basically, I didn't want to do target marketing because I don't think I philosophically even believe in that as like the way to develop your style. And so I went into painting and I just fucked around in bizarre ways that involves no painting whatsoever. And I also realized like in the measurement of the two potentially most useless degrees, illustration, there's no degree necessary. No one's ever going to look at your illustration degree. maybe, if I went back into academia, they would say, "Oh, you have a painting degree. That's cool."
Yeah, yeah. It's really funny too because I saw a job listing at my old school, and it was like I was like, oh, like cool. Like I remember there, like at school, there was like some real degenerates who were involved in teaching there, and I was like, well, maybe I could get a job just like teaching illustration. Like I know what I'm talking about. Like I could teach color. Like it'd be really fun. And now I think the qualifications for teaching are like you need to have an MFA like in the department that you're going to teach in, and like no ifs, ands, or buts. And I was like, I'm not going to grad school. I don't need that.
Yeah, there is also that reality that people just become teachers at the school they went to for BFA and or MFA. That's a bit much for me.
I mean, I think it's cool. It's like it's like a make work program for people
That's
who
true.
are like, people who are like on the edge and probably have some degree of talent.
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to go down that hole of how good are teachers at art, because I think that's a pretty interesting question. I've also found it pretty interesting when schools just hire good artists to be teachers. I wonder, like, I didn't go to SVA, but that's the school that comes to mind in my head for illustration, where they're just like, oh, this person's really good. Let's make them a teacher.
Yeah, which I'm betting is 50-50. Because to me, it's like artists are like athletes. It's like we have like a particular kind of brand image that comes from doing one thing kind of in seclusion for so long that I'm not sure it doesn't translate all the skill set, like the social skill sets necessary for like teaching or kind of like breaking down a process or all that stuff. I think it's like, yeah, it's a little more.
That's an interesting way to put it. You're talking about CTE caused by art practice.
I mean, yeah. I've met a few artists where I'm like, yeah, I mean, you've done something, you've altered your brain chemistry in a way that, just there ain't probably noticeable on a CAT scan.
For me, it's the total control that ruins you. The fact that you can throw this thing out if you don't like it, you can undo this aspect, you can kind of enter these worlds that you have hypothetical total control over, and then you have to step out into the real world where it's the complete opposite. I think this can be a very difficult juxtaposition.
Yeah, absolutely. And the worlds that you have total control over, they don't have, like, I think the one difference between like maybe an athlete or an artist is that when an artist has to make something, they have to like transmogrify some degree of like their humanity or other people's humanity into something worth kind of like observing or looking at or experiencing. But even in that, a lot of the skill, like a lot of the time it takes to acquire the skills of like doing that ends up kind of being like a very alienated process in my opinion, where you're not like bound to kind of like the tastes or perceptions of people who are just kind of like not buying in, I guess, what you're selling.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's very distinct from professional athletes. Sometimes I love sports, so sometimes I try to imagine what it feels like to play football and to have a whole stadium either for or against you. And it's probably amazing. But there is no equivalent in art making.
No. I mean, you could probably, I'm trying to think of, if you had to imagine the most famous, successful, I mean, we don't even talk about Illustrator. If you don't like Illustrator, you could probably barely, I mean, sometimes they fill auditoriums, but you couldn't fill a stadium with like the fan base or the audience of the most like popular artists in the world. At least that's how I feel.
Oh no! I mean, who would it like? What Cause Jeff Koons? Like,
yeah, Jeff Koons.
It's different. It's different. It's not. It's not music.
No,
like why would I want to even hypothetically meet Damien Hirst?
I don't know. But inversely, if I heard Damien Hirst was gonna like sword fight Jeff Koons or something, I'd probably pay like $30 for that.
Yeah, but you're there for the swords
and the fighting more than. Want to see what those guys are made out of.
So, did you go to Micah?
I went to the Rhode Island School of Design, where I'm now
Uh,
still living.
oh, really?
Yep.
Never been there. I hear it's a nice place.
Yeah. I mean, it's. Have you been? Have you been? Did you go to Micah?
No, I know a lot of people went to Micah, and I respect Micah. I went to UArts, which is, in my opinion, beneath both RISD and Micah in illustration.
Well, it's all. I mean, it's all pretty. I mean, yeah, maybe. I don't know. Who might say? But have you been to Baltimore?
Yep.
Yeah. So I would say that like Providence is just like a smaller, in a lot of ways, just like a smaller Baltimore. So it's pretty cool.
Is it dangerous, like Baltimore?
No,
I
no.
thought, yeah, my understanding was it's pretty nice.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has the virtues of being like a small city attached to like some like notable academic things. It has like it has like a storied history, which is maybe a bit overblown, and then also you're like 10 minutes away from a beach during the summer, which is the best part in my opinion.
Well, so how long you been there?
I took a 2-year sabbatical in 2017 to no in 2016 to 2018 to Seattle, but I've been since 2007. I've basically been living here.
Wow.
Yep, I had the opportunity to move to New York, and I went to visit apartments with some friends. I remember we went to go, and we looked at a few apartments. And I remember being like, "Man, this shit sucks. Like these apartments look like crap." And then we were standing outside of one of the apartments we were getting shown, and there was like a Looney Tunes scene happened where like a car pulled up, and a guy gets out, and he's pulling this other guy out of the car, and he's like beating him with a baseball bat, and he's like literally saying like, "You owe me fucking money," like. And then like they leave the guy who got hit out on the street, and they literally just tires squeal off down. I couldn't even tell you where I was, somewhere in Manhattan.
And you didn't want to live there because of that?
No, because I was already like so 50-50, and I also had some kind of like obstinate adolescent beliefs on kind of like what it would mean to be an art, like move to New York City to be an artist, that I was like, this all seems like a lot of hassle. Like, I don't need to get beat up with a baseball bat. I don't need to like get on the subway just to go like 10 minutes down the road. Like Providence is fine.
What were those beliefs?
I think I was kind of like always endeared by like the K Records guys from like the late 90s, early 2000s, and some of like the indie rock people, and some of the like some of the like arts history of Providence, that I had this like a belief that I kind of still have, but is probably BS, but that like there's a virtue, I think, in kind of being an artist outside of the social context of being an artist, if that makes sense. Just like not going to New York to like make it my, like, I mean, I wanted it to be my career, but like not going to New York, make it my career, and like, network with people, and like make art, like just only be friends with artists. I had this idea of kind of like, I would develop my passion and my art in kind of like some degree of seclusion, and that would bring its own kind of, I don't know, it would highlight my own virtue.
I understand. Integrity.
Yeah.
It's like a certain suspicion of human nature, I think, that if you're around certain temptations, you might make the art for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, I just thought it was like, it would just be like cooler. Like it would maybe more mysterious, or just like, I thought maybe the stuff I would make would be, more detached from kind of like a scene and a particular aesthetic and that kind of stuff.
No, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it is cooler in a sense, it's the sacrifice, right? Like, I think some people can feel the same way you feel, but they have more of a careerist bend. So they're like, that's good and all, but ultimately, I'm interested in the career path of an artist. And
those people would be right. And they would be smarter than me.
smarter in some sense. Maybe you're more romantic.
I'm defined by my great capacity for romance. This is
really that's what they say.
I mean, when I did move to Seattle, it was because I wanted to move. Well, I wanted to get out of Providence for a little bit, but I also was just like in a new relationship and wanted to go follow love.
Yeah, I think I can guess how that worked out.
It worked out fine. I mean, had a really weird time in Seattle, but the relationship ended up being worth it. The rest of the crap didn't.
Yeah, Seattle sounds like a really depressing place from what I've been told. Never been. Sounds tough though.
For like 3 or 4 months out of the year, it's like the most beautiful place I've ever been. But also the people there, I thought it was just me. Like I'll like internalize some kind of, if something's going wrong, I'll try and internalize and try to learn a lesson from it. But but apparently the people there are like very antisocial, and this is like a well-known fact. And then when I like talked to my ex-girlfriend about it, she was like, "Oh yeah, that like happened to me too." Like she was like, "I didn't make any friends," and I was like, "Oh, I thought it was just because I was like sullen and depressed or something."
Do you have a solid social circle in Rhode Island?
Yeah, it was one of the reasons why I moved back, because it was just like, I'm originally from upstate New York, and it's relatively close. It's not like an 8-hour plane ride. So the idea was kind of like, well, I'll go back to where my friends are, and then be closer to like my family, and kind of just go back to what I was doing, basically.
Well, were you making art through this whole process?
Yeah, and that was like and the methods and kind of like maybe kind of like career delusions or kind of career trajectory kind of became more clear when I was in Seattle. That was also part of the reason why I think I had to why I had to come back to Rhode Island.
And you also have a musical aspect to your output, no?
Yeah, I haven't done it in a while, and I don't really believe in like quitting, but for now it's definitely kind of like a distant priority, I would say.
Which came first, art or music?
Definitely art.
From a young age?
Yeah, pretty much like day one. I think, yeah, my older brother was a big drawer, and I would spend a lot of time copying him, kind of like, then he ended up doing music.
Really?
Mm-hmm. He went to school for like music production. He doesn't really do it anymore, but he was always like pretty competent musician.
And so the music element you've kind of left behind at the moment?
Yeah, because I had done it. Well, I mean, I recently played in like a cover band here, but that's like
covering what now?
Well, I had one good one, one bad one. The good one was I got to play drums in like a Sheryl Crow cover band.
Okay.
That was fun because I think drums is like the thing I would, if I was going to do just one thing in regards to music, I think it would be just drums. But and the other one I did was a Beastie Boys cover band, one of my least favorite bands of all time.
The Beastie Boys?
The Beastie Boys, yes.
Are one of your least favorite bands?
Yeah, I had to like listen to a bunch of their songs to kind of like prep and like learn. Yeah. And man, I don't really respect a single thing those guys were up to.
Yeah, let's get into that. I've never heard. It's not even disagreeing per se, but it's always interesting to hear someone be critical of a thing that I think a lot of people is just like sacred or beyond criticism. So it's interesting that you ended up in a cover band. Is it through being in the cover band you learned that you disliked the Beastie Boys? Or you knew beforehand?
Yeah, I knew beforehand, because I was put in this position where it's like, all right, Sam's gonna like be in one band, like I had been asked, and it's like my friend was like, well, we need to start another one. What do you want to do? And for like months, I was like literally months, I was waffling. I was like, oh, we could do Smashing Pumpkins, and I listened to Smashing Pumpkins, and I was like, I don't know if I could play these songs on guitar and sing. You know, there was a bunch. It was a '90s themed kind of like cover show for like a friend's birthday. Mm-hmm. So the conceit was it had to be from like 93 or 94, which is also like a terrible year for like popular music. Yeah. So then eventually I got put in the position of like, well, our other friend wants to do this and they want to do the Beastie Boys, and the decision got taken out of my hands. So I kind of just had to go along with it.
What is it? You think they're just goofy and cheesy in a bad way?
It has something to do with like everything I feel like they did. You know, it's like just because you're first to market doesn't make you like the best. You know, it might make you memorable in some people's eyes, but like everything they did, we've kind of all innovated on since. Like we've had white guys do sample heavy music, like Beck did cooler stuff and they did it with like the similar palette. You know, we've had choppy you know, sample music. Other people have done cooler and like more elegant and artful, or even funnier. And then they also were just kind of like on the one whole other side of it. They were just like a very mediocre like punk hardcore band. And there's like 3 million of those bands that get born every day that are probably more interesting. So I just don't have. I don't see the vision with, you know, the Beastie Boys.
And what about Sheryl Crow?
I mean, just beautiful songs, beautiful melody, beautiful chords.
I know I know the hits, obviously. I can imagine that being fun to play.
Yeah. And we also did like a slow jam off like the same album. And then I discovered that like she has like a beautiful closing song on the album. I mean, a lot to learn to discover there. And it turns out she's got a deep well of tunes.
For sure. I see that you have a Twitter. I feel like I rarely interview people who have a Twitter.
Oh, it's an unfortunate part of my personality is that I deeply enjoy the perversion of Twitter.
Well, that's fine. Yeah, I mean,
well, I think people have always nowadays because it's, you know, because of the Elon Musk takeover, and this is all very bad, but because of, you know, the state of things on the internet, people always have to act like, oh my God, I hate Twitter, or I hate going on social media. I hate all these things. And I think that people are lying in public to save themselves for the fact that we are all little sickos who enjoy being on social media and experiencing the like most brain damaged thoughts of strangers.
Right. Is that how you feel about being on social media? You embrace it?
Yeah, I don't even think that like my presence on social media is like particularly good or insightful. Like if I had to like show a stranger my tweets, I mean, most of it would be indecipherable to them, but they would not walk away being like, this is a smart, cool guy. But I do think that it's like you can't live with it, you can't live without it. So every day I got to go on Twitter and just have to like see people talk about like the dumbest things, and I just have to I truly get some kind of like, I don't know, some joy of the humanity of it, as much as it's also just like grotesque at times.
And what's the point? Like, I don't have a Twitter, but I never have.
Never had
what?
Twitter?
No, I'm like a second or third adopter of all things, like of all things except Tumblr, I feel. and because I think I was early and genuinely connected to Tumblr, I was very fortunate to have an illustration career come of it, and then comics get published. but I can't fake it. Like once that just fell apart, I was like, I don't want to build up another house of cards on social media. And like, I kind of half-heartedly, I have an Instagram that's just like not really a thing.
Right.
And from there, I think Twitter probably came after that Tumblr fall. I don't really know.
Around the same time, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, I think I just got to an age where I was looking for ways to be financially stable without relying on the social media. And Twitter is definitely interesting to me. But yeah, I'm kind of pragmatic in the sense of if I'm going to do a thing, I usually need to know why. So Tumblr was to get illustration work and comics published.
Mm-hmm.
Twitter, I don't know why I would do it, so I didn't do it. But I'm curious. It sounds like you genuinely just enjoy saying things and then reading things on Twitter, right? Is that fair?
Yes, it's more.
Or
There's no reading.
Okay, but there's no like goal to the Twitter.
No, I do like Twitter for sharing things, but it's like social media is just so ephemeral in the way that it kind of like will promote something that you've made or it won't, like time of day. I really do kind of think of Instagram more as the avenue for like me maintaining some kind of like kayfabe of like being a professional to some degree, or like relating or explicitly relating to like the outside world in like a way that isn't antisocial. Where for Twitter is purely for just like, it quite literally probably has the same effect on like my brain as like if I just slam my head in the door. And
Yeah.
I enjoy that. I like enjoy. I'm kind of this way with like coworkers and stuff where they'll just tell me, you get these coworkers and they'll just tell you like psychotic stuff. They'll just be like, "Did you hear that? Like they're teaching the kids over to be gay over at like the elementary school?" And I'll just be like, "Wow, tell me more." Like
this is at the you want to go deep into the freak.
Yes, like
the fringe. Yeah.
Yes, like tell me how you got here. Like because in some ways like you are also detached from reality, and I have to like diagnose this mentally. Otherwise, maybe my own kind of like establishment of reality will start fading away a little bit.
Are we talking about screen printing coworkers here?
Yeah. A lot of cool guys and gals.
That's amazing.
In screen printing.
Yeah, it's an interesting world. I screen print sometimes, but it's kind of divorced from a commercial aim. So that makes it a little more tolerable. It's definitely a frustrating process, at least the way I do it.
It's the only noble way to do it is to like do it for like a poster or like your own t-shirt. I think the rest of it, everything I've ever done is like, I think it's truly the stupidest. It's like truly the stupidest industry I can possibly imagine. I think I could work 100 different jobs in 100 different lifetimes and still be like, screen printing is wasteful and stupid.
So what would are you trying to get out of this, or you sounds like you might enjoy the slop, being in the mud?
I think that I like having like coworkers, like I like being around like regular people. I don't know what that says about me, but
it's pretty normal, I think.
Yeah, but it's more so just like when things are good, it's like you go home and you forget about it, and then you go back to like making art or whatever. When things are bad, you're like driving home. It's like a 45-minute drive, and you're seeing like a car crash on the side of the highway, and you get like a pang of jealousy because you're like, I bet they don't have to go to work tomorrow. Like,
yeah, that sounds pretty bad if you're envying a car accident.
It's not a bad car crash. Like you see a really bad one, and like existential like nausea washes over you. But you see like a fender bender, or maybe the car's totaled. Like you're like, well, they probably have insurance. Like, but then you're like, well, I bet they get like a week off work, and like that's probably pretty sick.
Well, what's the escape? You got an escape planned or no?
Well, so before I was working a screen printing job, and then I got a job working in animation, and that was like the single best job I ever had in my life. And then I was in talks to like maybe work on another show, and an opportunity came and went, and then I was signed up to work on another show, and then immediately after the strike, the whole animation industry collapsed and the show got canceled.
This was Tuca and Bertie.
Yeah, that was the one I worked on, and then it was like you're working on the show. I really can't say enough good things about my experience working on that show. It was like being back in art school. You'd have little meetings where people get to show what they made. The work itself was like generally fun to do. The art director was amazing. So then it wraps up.
Was that Allison?
Yes, it was Allison.
Yeah, I spoke to her, I think a month ago. I had no idea you worked on that show.
Yeah, it was just so, I feel like I got picked out of the clear blue sky for no good reason, but I'm like, when I get the opportunity to like work on a project like that, I tend to kind of like turn it into kind of just like a little bit of like a personal jihad, and like really devote, at least for like the first 2 weeks I remember of that job, I like devoted myself to it like 110%, worked like 10-12 hours just to like make sure I knew what I was doing. And I love doing that. And for a second there, I thought maybe the show would get picked up again, or maybe I'd work with some of my other coworkers and I'd have I need to get a career in animation actually going here. Like, I love the work. I think I'm capable of it. But again, man, this whole industry just like went right off the deep end, it seems, in the past like 6 months.
Yeah, that's what I've learned from interviewing a lot of animators. I didn't know that. But yeah, that's cool. It makes sense that would be an enjoyable job. It sounds like Allison definitely cultivated a very open approach to that show as well.
Yeah, and it's like when I'm working on like my stuff, every now and then it would be nice to have someone like, I always imagined that would be like kind of nice to be able to like look over my shoulder and ask someone like, what do you think? Is this looking good? Is this looking right? But you don't have that, so you really have to just like develop your own judgments, and you can just get stuck in the mud, for no good reason, for reasons that you can't quite understand. Well, then you get to work with like an art director who like knows what they're talking about. You get to like kind of like work on something. You're kind of like, well, this looks like shit, but I know that like I can hand this over to someone and they can tell me exactly kind of like what they think is wrong, and then you can just like point yourself like an arrow straight at that horizon, which is like way less stressful than me.
Right. And you do comics, right?
Yeah, for better or worse. That's what I've been doing for the past like 2 or 3 years.
And then in what form? So is there I'm not sure I've ever seen a physical form of your comics.
No, there hasn't been a physical form. Maybe I'm too self-effacing or like too honest, but I started working on like a long form comic in like, I don't know, like right before the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And I was always like, this will be a web comic or this will be online. And then you kind of realize, you don't know what's going into it, but then you kind of realize there's like so many practical things that are so messed up about that. Like, just comics are like impossible to kind of, I guess some people do it, but just like an online only comic is like impossible to kind of like promote on the internet. Like you post on Instagram and it has like, I can do like a single color illustration and it'll get way less engagement than like a comic page or a comic panel. And there's like reason for this. One is that like I knew starting out that the comics were going to be not as good technically or any degree as like color illustration or even color comics that I could do. I'm much stronger at that. And the second reason is that like the social media does not make this like a legible thing. So it's something that I'm kind of just like treating, I don't know, almost just like a meditation. Like I'm just doing it and doing it and doing it. And now I'm getting to a point where I'm working on something where I'm like, okay, I think I want to get some friends to help me, maybe like risograph like a few copies. Maybe I'll be more conscientious about like sending it out to publishers and seeing if there's anything there. But again, if you're not like promoting it online or you don't have an online following, that gets complicated. So I don't know. I've been doing comics. I love it, but it is a little like the reason why I started doing comics was because I thought it was like or I believe that it's like narrative is a little more tangible and easily sociable. You know, you can show it to people and they can read it, even if they don't quite understand or like the story. It's like way more direct than just like, you know, a vaguely kind of narrative illustration or abstract painting, whatever. I wanted that connection to like an audience, but the irony is that like it's the most singularly hard thing to kind of like show to a large audience in some way.
Well, it certainly has its difficulties. It's a very challenging medium.
Yeah.
In respect to your paintings, are they, I got to assume at this point, your illustrations are digital?
Yeah. For so long, up until like 2018, I was doing gouache paintings, and that like, that ended up being so demoralizing after a period of time.
Which aspect? You're trying to do illustration with gouache paintings?
Well, I mean,
or just gouache?
I love gouache, and my hope is that like once the weather gets nicer, I kind of want to like do some like landscape painting or something, like actually do actual like gouache painting. I have no problem with that, but it just became this like whole ordeal. Editorial always confounded me because you would get these deadlines for like, I remember one time getting a deadline, like a crazy tight deadline, not crazy tight, but a relatively tight deadline for like an illustration that was going to be from, it was like web only, and it was from the New Yorker archive. And I remember, you know, the email, and this was a great art director. I loved working with this guy, but you get an email and they'd be like, we need sketches, you know, tomorrow night, and we need the final after that. And I would always just kind of be like, I don't think you need these sketches for like a week, honestly. This is like an archive thing that's going to only be on the web. You could give me a little more time, and honestly, you could pay me the same amount of money. So I was always bumping up against these like time constraints with gouache, because then you finish it and you have to scan it. I remember one time I did something, and then I finished it, scanned it. I had to stay up all night because I was also working a job. Stayed up all night, scanned it, sent it in. And I didn't hear back from the art director for a little bit, which is always, you know, like, you know, that you're just going to get back the shittiest email when they don't email right back, you know that the next email you get is going to be some kind of like ordeal. And the art director wanted me to change the entire dimensions of the piece that I had made. And it's like, I did this shit on paper. I can't stretch and crop and, you know, skew the paper. It is what it is. You know what I mean? So just like, so that, you know, stuff like that kept happening. I had to get on planes. I had to get on plane rides, and I was staying up all night painting. Like I'd have to scan it at like a really high DPI and scan, like have it so it could scale down for web or something like that. And I'd be painting on these little gouache paintings that were smaller than postcards. I got really good at it, but after a certain point in time, I was just like, I'm not proving anything to anyone. All I'm doing is just like shortening my lifespan. That's a really long answer.
No, but that's what I expected, you know. That's kind of what I experienced in terms of, I mean, I would find it frustrating when I scanned in kind of neon-ish gouache for an illustration, and it would just, it's like, why did I do this? If I could just did it in the computer, then I could have actually gotten to that color a lot more, you know, closer to that color than what I'm experiencing with this scanning issue.
Yep.
So when you're doing, you know, for instance, a lot of stuff on your Instagram or the fan art stuff, am I to assume that's digital, or do you still?
It's all digital now. It's all digital.
Oh, it's all digital.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, especially now that like I am pretty like committed, or not committed, but just like the professional side of what I do is like so feast or famine. I don't really know what direction to like you know, I'm kind of like always chasing my own tail in terms of like, oh, if I was going to be an artist that made money, like how would I do it? I'm not really sure. I had some really great opportunities to work with some great people. So it never made sense for me with the limited time I had outside of all these, like working a regular job, to then like go back to a slower way of working, I guess.
Yeah. Do you lament that, or do you fully embrace the digital transition?
Man, I think I lament it for I lament that other people don't get the opportunity to make the transition that I did. I think it was like deeply informative on how I think about making art, how I like look at art, how I value certain things in art.
Do you
And
mean starting off like physically painting something and then
yes.
transitioning?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was very, very valuable. And we're now
In a sense, is it accurate to say in a sense you're mimicking that, but you're just doing it more efficiently?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, there's some things, there's some little tricks I do and stuff I do now where it's pretty explicitly. Well, it's hard to say because like to me it feels explicitly digital, but it's always whatever the digital thing you're doing is mimicking something analog. But to me, I like it looks a little more explicitly digital. That's kind of the idea.
Yeah. I mean, to this day, I think I use all Photoshop layers like I'm setting up for a screen print at all times. And I don't even want to know how to do certain things more complex than that.
Yeah,
I just want to mimic what I like to do physically, but to do it faster. And then comics is even more, I guess, obvious because it ends up being reproduced anyway. So I do miss making physical comic pages, and I might go back to it just because I have this weird vision of when I'm older and I want to be able to show my grandchildren yellowed pieces of paper and to prove I actually drew it, because I think there's something disgusting to me about the fact that a lot of my drawings only happened digitally.
mm-hmm.
And the world is going to be so oversaturated with quote unquote digital art in the next 100 years, obviously, that I feel like I just want to go back, even if it's going to take more time, and just, you know, draw on shitty paper again, and
Yep.
and ink, and have it take forever, and then try to use a shitty white pen to go over the black part, and it barely works half the time. Like I think if I can find a way to do that without financial repercussion, you know, like
Yeah.
that would be ideal in my opinion.
Yeah. When I was starting this like current comic project I was working on, the original impetus was like, oh, I'll do it on paper. Like I had this, yeah, just like this allure to like this, like I this happens a lot where I'll get like, kind of like trapped in this allure of like the materiality of something, like, oh, it has to be a painting, it has to be on
Sure.
paper. But then when I'm thinking about kind of like, again, like comics especially, it's like I so clearly want to make, when I'm making, like as clear and readable as possible, as like good looking as possible, as like simple as possible. And then it just dawned on me like that, like if I gave into this impulse of like working on paper, it would be counterintuitive to like my ultimate goals. So that's why I'm thinking like if I do go back to like some kind of paper, like I know that inside me there is like some landscape painting, like on paper, medium size, from photos, from life. I know that that's in me somewhere, but this is not the point in time where I'm doing it, I think.
Yeah, no, I understand.
But to me, the allure of materiality, I think, is just like it's too much. Like sometimes, like it's like I want to work in a sketchbook, and then I pull out a sketchbook, and I'm drawing in it, and I'm like, this kind of sucks, just like a little bit, you know. Like this is like, I don't know. Yeah.
What do you mean? In what way does it suck?
Um, yeah, maybe it's because right now I'm more focused on just like directly translating. It's like I'm not so free form. I'm not looking to like really explore anything particularly abstract. I'm looking for like the best way to simply render an object in like the most classic drawing way, which is not something I'm even particularly good at. And the best way for me to like figure that out is in a way where like you work digitally. It's like you can undo a line and see how it changes. Like there's no like erasing, messing up the paper. There's no like stuff getting messed up or wasting a page or anything. You can just do it in like one 500 by 800 pixel document and kind of like work out how you would draw something to like the best of your ability. I guess is the way it makes sense to me is like a lot of the material stuff like gets in the way of kind of like it feels like it's going to be the end in itself, and that in itself does not produce to me anything that's ever been like the favorite thing I've ever made.
Yeah. I think some people see that interaction with the material as essential to their process, but I don't think illustrators often do.
No, definitely.
Because illustrators are often very process driven and trying to arrive at, like a designer almost, trying to arrive at via iterations their platonic resolution to the thing.
Yes. And I think there's a way that I could engage with materiality and still make something cool and interesting, but I'm not sure it's exactly what I'm looking for right now. Because like I'm looking for something almost like I'm practically want to make something like unartistic, and materiality begs a lot of just like you have to be willing to engage with some stuff that I think is a little more abstract, if that makes sense. Yeah, rather than just
actually speaking of platonic, I'd like you to speak about Howl's Moving Castle as being invariably I end up talking about Miyazaki about half the time on this podcast.
I mean, why not?
Yeah,
he's the best.
But as I'm scrolling through this Twitter of yours, I see
humiliating
that this is very interesting to me. I'll read the beginning. I think Howl's has come to be the platonic ideal of a Miyazaki movie.
Yeah.
You mind explaining that? You mind explaining yourself?
Sounds like I had a lucid moment. Wow. I think in that specific tweet, I'm reacting to also this. I think it's like some movie rating website directed at Zoomers or something. And
I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, and I think Howl's was like really high up on the list. It might have been number one even. And
number one?
It might have been number one.
Oh yeah. What the what?
Which is not my personal estimation of the Miyazaki canon. You know what I mean? I don't necessarily think Howl's Moving Castle is like his singular best movie.
Wow.
But I think in a way, once you escape like the Totoro or Ponyo end of the spectrum, it's like his most watchable movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess if you suspend all sense of like pacing and resolution, and you're just there for what you might call entertainment, that might be true.
Yeah, I don't think there's that weird middle section where they go to, I just rewatched it recently, where they go to the castle and they got to climb up the stairs, and it's like this brutally long scene. Just like the first time you see it, it's like funny. And then the second time you see it, you're like, God, I remember this shit kind of, for a guy who, rarely misses, this is like a little bit of a miss. And then like the third time you watch it, you're like, holy crap, like I might even skip this. But there's something about that movie that is like, like if you're just like someone who's just kind of like vaguely Ghibli pilled, you know what I mean? Like my sister-in-law was like, oh, I haven't seen Howl's Moving Castle, but I've seen it from TikTok, and it's this scene where they're like cooking on the stove, and I'm like, yeah, that's Howl's Moving Castle. That's like the perception of this movie of like, it's like it doesn't have any of the kind of like deep complicated. I mean, he tried to go there, he tried to go there with the Iraq War stuff. It doesn't really land, but it makes for some cool scenes. but it has kind of like all these Ghibli isms in this very kind of just like straight ahead way that people kind of like relate to the like Ghibli aesthetic. It's cozy. They make the cool food on the stove. There's the funny talking flames. There's like a love story. You know what I mean? There's no real deep psychology or violence. There's no ecological themes like Nausicaa or Mononoke. There's no like deep inner conflict that he's grappling with, like he is on the latest one or in The Wind Rises. It's just like all these collage of just like things that people regard as Ghibli-isms in the most like platonically ideal way. It's like a very pretty movie. It's got some of the best animation. So that's kind of like how I view that movie and kind of like the popular perception of it.
Yeah. That's an interesting way to think about it. I've never heard the term Ghibli pilled. I'm processing that.
You go on YouTube and there's a lot of like playlists where it's like, you know, it's like the flower bed scene from Howl's Moving Castle, and then it's like some lo-fi hip hop music with like a Joe Hisashi sample. You know, to me this is Ghibli core. This is Ghibli pilled. It's like the most cozy elements, the most like what some may perceive as like the most sentimental elements of the kind of like Miyazaki universe, kind of like broken down in almost like Disney-fied, actually.
Yeah. Where would you rank Howl's if you had to, amongst the 12, loosely speaking, not holding you to it?
Probably higher than most people would, I think.
That's cool. That's telling. That's interesting.
I don't think it's bad. I think it's actually a really fun movie. And it might have my single most favorite kind of like Joe Hisashi theme. The Merry-Go-Round of Life, I think, might be one of my favorites. Maybe the Porco Rosso one beats it out. But yeah, that song, really great. Might be fourth on the list.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right on.
I can defend that movie. You know, I know some people don't. They view it as like a weaker one, but like to me, you know, Castle in the Sky, not great. Totoro, unless I'm watching it with my niece, don't like it.
Interesting.
Graded on the curve. Like that guy, you know, it's like even the ones that I don't, quote unquote, don't like.
No, they're all great.
Yeah, even the ones that I don't like, I'm like, you know, this shit's better than like any movie that comes out in a given year.
Of course. This is understood.
Yeah, I do want to be clear and tell anyone. It's like when Boy and the Heron came out, and I would just read reviews from people, and you know they'd be so blasé. It's like, oh, there were some nice scenes, the animation was pretty, and I was like, it's like the only time where I'm always like offended. I'm like, you don't even know what you're watching. Like this might be the last time you get to see this. This ain't Spider-Verse as much. I mean, Spider-Verse is beautiful. Don't get me wrong. I like Spider-Verse, but I'm just like, this ain't Spider-Verse. This is like. This guy's really going for it. He's making art, as compromised as it is by kind of like being a movie and being animation and all that stuff and being part of a business. He is who he is.
Yeah, me and my boy Neve threw down about that film. He has it ranked as number 1, at least from after watching it. You know, I was very critical of the film.
He was DMing me about it, and I saw him. I think it was on Twitter maybe or something, and posting about it. And I don't think it's number 1, but I do think there was a few moments in that movie that, you know, I'm not gonna lie, I think I cried a little bit, and I have not had that out of a Ghibli movie.
Interesting. I only teared up at the beginning of the film before it even technically started, because I thought this is the last time I get to see it.
Oh yeah,
a Miyazaki film fresh.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to watch it more before I go deep into it. But I do find Howl's to be a fascinating film, and I think you can learn a lot from somebody about how they rank Miyazaki films and what they're looking for in a narrative or even in storytelling in general. Because I have Howl's at like 8, probably maybe 7 out of 12 in terms of the order of things.
Yeah, I've got to bring up the filmography here just to just to remember. I mean,
But it's really interesting. Like here, I'll rattle off my current rankings for you.
please.
Mononoke, first film I saw.
Classic.
To me, the most complete in every way. It's basically perfect as a film. Even the use of 3D, which was the first time he used it, and he kind of regretted, I think is well integrated.
Yeah, looks sick.
I might change this one, but number 2 is Spirited Away. Although I feel that it drags in the second half. I'm not a huge fan of the second half of the film. I just think the first half's great. Castle Cagliostro.
Wow, third.
Crazy high.
I have some opinions on the Cagliostro kind of era, I'll say.
I just think it's so pure and fun. And when you watch that film, there's like not even 3 minutes of downtime. It's insane, the pacing. Mm-hmm. Nausicaa. Yeah. I love that. I love this era. I love the music. I love the feel. It's actually one of my biggest qualms with The Boy and the Heron. I don't like the feel of the film, and I think the 3D looks garish at times. Yeah. But that's Castle in the Sky. I actually really like.
Wow. You hate to see it.
This and then it's controversial. It gets moved around a bit. I'll be honest, but Mononoke pretty much never moves. Ponyo is after that, which I think is underrated.
Yeah. How can you hate? I mean, I can see how you could hate it, but also I watched it recently, and I was like, damn, the animation on that is insane.
The squiggly scene is like one of the best scenes of animation.
Yeah, he really was ever done. He really was like, no story, but we're really going to focus on just like how this shit looks. And
I couldn't even tell you the story if I had to write it down for you.
Yeah.
If I had to go back. But I don't have the same weird feeling of disappointment like I did at the end of Howl's, because I felt Howl's was trying to have a story and then like kind of didn't. Mm-hmm. But I go on. Porco Rosso, which I think for people, this film can wildly fluctuate, because if you like fun in airplanes and Miyazaki just being happy making what he's making, I think this film can be really high for people. But in general, like I screened it at the art center I run, and it was like, I don't even know if 5 people showed up. Then I have Howl's. Currently, again, I only watched Boy and the Heron once, so that's right under Howl's. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. The Wind Rises at 10, but actually that is a film that has recently started to make me emotional as I rewatched it. And so I could see that movie climbing. I really didn't, when I saw it in theaters, I was kind of underwhelmed, and I think I walked out saying to myself, this is not what and this is a very selfish way to view a film, but this is not what I want from Miyazaki. You know, I want more like fantasy, crazy shit. But I'm becoming more human. Now that I'm 35, I'm slowly, becoming a human. And I think watching that film as a human, it's quite moving. And then the Herzog cigarette guy is very interesting to me.
Oh yeah,
just weird character. I don't know why, but some people love Kiki's. Kiki's is 11 for me.
Kiki's the only one I've only seen once.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a dude, and I can admit that I don't usually connect to like coming of age girl stories. Just
not at this age.
No, I don't think at any age for me it was clicking. But it's really not. I don't think I'm like subtle enough. Like I like, and this is why I really love some of The Boy and the Heron, because it's pretty over the top in some ways and dark. But Totoro is 12, but I think like it's interesting you mentioned watching it with your niece. Mm-hmm. I think that movie's meant to be experienced with a child. I don't think I can access it quite. I don't think I'm quite innocent enough to access it as it's meant to be accessed.
Yeah. Yep.
But I think I'm greedy too. I'm still just like, give me more Cat Bus. I need crazy shit.
Yeah.
And
he waits till you get through the whole movie, and you're like, oh yeah, this cat with the fucked up looking whiskers, like, oh, that's cool. Like there's a touching degree, the relationship with the sisters and the missing mother and all that stuff. Like that as an adult, I think it still speaks to me. but a lot of it is kind of like once you see that cat bus, you're like, man, we could have been doing this the entire movie. Like, why'd you wait till like last 10 minutes?
I think, again, it's about the subtle appreciation of rural Japan that's fading. But I actually like Palm Poko, not a Miyazaki film, for its exploration of that in a ridiculous way. I just think that the more I watch the film, the more I like that film. I think that film's actually pretty underrated.
Have you seen Only Yesterday?
No, I actually haven't seen it.
If you liked the kind of like Palm Poko exploring, like, and Totoro kind of exploring that, Only Yesterday, like, explicitly in a much more like human, like it's basically just like a drama, like a early 20 something drama of like a young woman who like works in an office, but then goes to like the countryside and works on a farm, and she's not sure what she like wants to do with it. Like, beautiful movie. I could only watch it once because I just was kind of like, the Takahata movies, a lot of them are kind of like, man, you can only have, like, I didn't actually, to be fair, I haven't seen Kaguya or My Neighbors, but the other ones he made you're kind of like, man, I can only watch these once because they are so like, he goes way more to the I guess dark than like Miyazaki kind of hints at, I think.
Yeah. No, Takahata is fascinating, and I think I'll grow to appreciate him more over time. Kaguya is an incredible film, just insanely beautiful film.
I'm ashamed to say I started it and couldn't finish it.
It's shameful. Huh?
It felt like this is gonna sound so dismissive, but it felt like a experimental like student film.
Interesting.
Like the way that it was just like, you could have just told that story with like a much more crystalline, typical Ghibli aesthetic, and it would have worked. Again, I didn't watch the rest of it, so what do I know? But it just felt like I just was so distracted by the style of it. I was just like, this doesn't seems like so over the top for like this story. It just like, I guess, I couldn't get past the way it looked. It felt so like I'm in school and like, here's my project exploring like this like very particular style of animation that I learned.
I think Takahata is like that, and that's his strength and his weakness. My Neighbors, the Yamadas, it's actually has some insanely beautiful moments, amazing animation. And I think I relate to him more as a maker, his kind of propensity to be stylistically, like each project's kind of different. It's kind of trying to find its own language within it, where Miyazaki has his style, and the through line of his whole career is much more clear, I think. And I think that also allowed him to make better and more consistent films. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I would love to hear someone argue that Takahata actually has better films than Miyazaki ultimately. I think if you're interested in emotion, it's probably would be true that Takahata accesses that more successfully.
Yeah, he's like he's this classic example of an artist that, like, I think you're right, and what's fascinating is the diversity, but also like the frustration is the kind of diversity of kind of like aesthetic and kind of even his like narrative, like his narrative approach, very very diverse. Where it's just kind of like, I like that to me is almost like facile. It's like you could do the hard work, like your colleague Miyazaki, and stick to like the aesthetic and focus in on kind of like what you really want to say, like what the narrative is and like the relationships of all these characters and all the fun stuff that goes with that. But instead you're getting hung up on making it look like a watercolor. Like, I get a little frustrated because it's like, we all saw your other movies. We know you have it in you. What are you doing over here with this stuff? But so you respect it in a way, because you're like, when you see an artist just kind of like follow their like immediate kind of temptation, it's equally engaging, but it is kind of like, I like the old stuff, play the hits a little bit.
It's interesting because you said it isn't clear who says more or says more successfully, Miyazaki or Takahata. I think that's actually part of my issue with The Boy and the Heron. I think Miyazaki is trying to say too much in a certain way for me in that film, and he's not doing it successfully.
Yeah.
Where like Mononoke is the ultimate example, I think, of a, how would you say? It's like this unbelievable exploration of the complexity of morality in a way without being preachy or telly about anything.
Yes.
He just shows you things very successfully.
Yeah.
I don't know why, and I haven't figured it out. Again, I think watching a film once, especially any of these guys' films, is not, you have no right to really speak on them.
Yeah, I'd agree.
But something about the film came off. I mean, I can imagine it's like, oh shit, this is my last film, and I need to like jam all this stuff that I need to get off my chest into one film. And it just, for me, got really jumbled and ceased to be emotionally effective in moments where I thought it wanted to be. So I feel like I try to judge films based on what I think they're telling me I'm allowed to judge them on.
Yeah, I mean, how else can you?
And well, you can judge. I mean, I think people judge shit all the time just based on what they like or don't like or want from it. Just like I was saying with, I think it's unfair for me to go into The Wind Rises and come out being like, why wasn't it more fantasy?
Yeah, where's the cat post?
Yeah, like, well, that wasn't what he was doing. And I mean, Takahata's dead, right? I think he died.
Yeah, he died probably like 10 years ago or something like that, around there.
Yeah, I guess probably right after Kaguya.
Yeah, that was the last one, if I recall.
So I'm sure Miyazaki. I think Miyazaki's a big fan of that film, and I think it took him something like 12 years. Although he's known, like I've read many books on Miyazaki. Takahata is known for his just like inability to do things on time.
Yeah,
like films and TV shows would just like go way beyond deadlines.
Yeah, and then another example where like not only are you now you're changing up your style every movie, and you can't just kind of like bear down on kind of one interest or the virtue of like the Miyazaki filmography is that like you watch all of them and you get a sense of like as much as they are products, because he's doing like like the Nausicaa manga is like this very clear singular that was by him. The rest of them are a little more compromised, but no, I'm a little like, get over yourself if you can't just kind of like make something on time, especially if you're making like a movie, maybe it's like anti-art of me, but it is a little like I feel like the rest of us head down here in the trenches, we're making illustrations, we're making comics or whatever. We're working for clients who want us to get it done tomorrow for $200, and they're giving you like $40 million and you can't get it done on time. I'm a little like, hey, you're giving us a bad name.
Interesting. So you have a, despite being a romantic, you have a strangely kind of efficient, pragmatic view as well.
Yeah, I think yeah, it's an impossible combination of characteristics to deal with and live with, and yet I do it every day.
That's not uncommon in art making. You have to have kind of both of these things occurring off and on.
And I don't think I've ever been like a really highfalutin, like high philosophy kind of artist, but I think as I've gotten older, and especially because like you do log on to Instagram all day or social media or whatever, and you're inundated with so much art in like a passive way. You're just like a whale kind of just like ingesting the krill. It's like, I do kind of want someone to kind of just like be honest with me about like their art and like make something that they're trying to like reach out and like grab me by the hand with. And that's like what I'm like at my best. Like that's what I'm trying to do. Like no more frilly abstraction, no more like subtext. Like I just want to make something that's like you want to like read, you know what I mean? Like you want to read like I don't know, Jujutsu Kaisen or something. Like you want to read this, like you want like a teenager to read it. So when I hear someone's like hold up making a movie for 12 years and they're over budget by like $40 million, on some hands, the romantic in me is like respect. The guy who has to like live day to day is kind of like, I just want to see this shit, man. You're taking too long. You know, like I got to hear, and now everyone's cutting costs everywhere else, and you get to hold up and do this. But I guess it's a privilege earned by being as talented as they are.
Yeah, I mean, those dudes. There's a reason that Miyazaki respects Takahata and vice versa.
Yeah.
You know, like, that being said, is there a clear painting or comic that people should look at to understand the essential Sam?
Maybe like a year or two ago, I was like, okay, these like long form kind of like shonen influenced kind of black and white comics aren't exactly popular on Instagram, and it's going to take me a while to get. I also feel in another sense it's going to take me a while to get practically good enough at them to really feel confident. You know, there's like when you're a musician, there's like a moment where you finally write a song that you feel comfortable sharing to other people because it doesn't feel like a catastrophe for other people to hear the lyrics or the melodies or the earnestness. I feel that similarly about some of the comics I've made so far, in the sense that like I needed to have made them, but I don't think that they are speaking the language I'm trying to speak. Some of the color comics I made starting like a year or two ago, I think are like a good summation of like my talents and kind of like maybe a little bit of my sense of humor and kind of like the some kind of outlook maybe I have on the world. I think that those do a pretty good job of like distilling down, like a lot of things that I think I'm trying to like get at, I would say. And I made them like for Instagram. Like I made them to be, I think they would work well published. I have enough now maybe to start working on that, but they were made for Instagram, that like the first slide was a color image, you'd be engaged, and then you'd want to keep swiping. It's like 6 panels, 10 panels.
Okay, so that's what. Yeah, I always like to ask people that, especially if someone's new to your work, and oftentimes illustration can kind of scatter someone's output into kind of singular moments. Mm-hmm. That I like to ask, what's like kind of the most vertical or deepest project one's worked on thus far, because that's usually the most telling.
I'd like to think that the color stuff, like these color comics that I've made, there's not, I haven't done them in a bit. Like I had to step away from them because I just get like, I don't know, I just get bored easily, I guess. But they're like the thing that like, I'm like, if I make more of these, the ones that I have done, I'm like very happy with. Those are the ones where I'm like, you might get a sense of like the person behind them, and you might get a sense of like a worldview, and they're entertaining.
Well, so that sounds like the way to go.
Yeah, it unfortunately is like my passions are so irregular, which has been like, it's not worked out. That's been the negative for me in a professional sense when you're trying to like freelance, because you have to be very regularly posting. You have to like kind of always remind people you exist, which is not how like my process works. It takes a long time for me to like get an idea I'm happy about, working on an idea. I've worked on so much stuff that I just haven't shown people. I have like 20, 30 pages of comics I haven't shown people. I have unfinished stuff that I just won't show people because I just got bored or I just don't think it's up to snuff.
So you got a little Takahata in you.
I do. It's just unfortunate because what I should do, at the end of the day, what should I be doing? I should be starting a Patreon. I should be selling the color comics to people. I should be pitching publishers. That should be the thing. I don't know if that'd even really like be financially viable. Like I think ultimately, we're talking like $5,000 extra a year, which is not nothing, but for the amount of effort, maybe not worth it. But there is a lot of that in me where it's just kind of like, but also part of it's not like no one's paying me. So, in the antagonism of that statement,
I see what
no one's giving me $10 million. I have nothing to produce. So when I was working on Toucan Birdie, I never missed a deadline. I made sure that shit was always done. I always made sure it was good because, hey, they were paying me.
Right. That is quite different.
I owe that to them.
You mentioned. Right. There's kind of an obligation that comes with compensation.
Yeah, and I take the compensation because those opportunities come so few and far between that I try and, when I'm being compensated, represent myself to the best of my abilities, much to the detriment of my health and mental health.
Hey, that's being a professional sometimes, I think.
I think that sometimes you do have to give a bit. I think it's okay sometimes to give a bit too much. I don't think it's advisable for people our age, but sometimes you got to.
Well, I got to go to bed, but it's very good meeting you.
Good meeting you finally.
And yeah, I look forward to those comics being put out. I'd love to see the color and the black and white ones in a book together.
God, that would be the dream come true. But this one I'm working on now will definitely. I'm happy with most of it. Will definitely get posted at some point, whether or not it's on as a one day PDF or whatever. Who knows? But you'll see it. It's pretty good. And then the color ones. I mean, these people, when you see those on Instagram, folks, smash the heart.
You gotta smash it. You gotta break the heart.
Yeah. I want thousands of likes. I want hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram. I'm not ashamed to admit it.
Well, yeah, those look really good risographed, I think.
Yeah, that's the idea. And
bring them back to that grit. Bring them back to that materiality.
Yeah, maybe rescan. Maybe do a rescan too. Play with that.
Oh boy,
that's the idea.
Oh boy,
that's the idea.
I hear you. All right, man.
All right, take it easy.
Good night. Music by Dory Bavarsky and Mingja Chen. Next up, we have Me Paints Me. Enjoy your week.